My name is Gilda. My mother is Ida, and my grandmother is Hannah. One evening, we had finished dinner, and my children begged their grandmother Ida to tell about her life in the olden days. They were beginning to get curious about their ancestors. She sighed, took a deep breath, and started her story by reciting the Hebrew prayer, Ana B'Kerach. We beg thee, with the strength and greatness of thy right arm, untangle our knotted fate. This is a prayer recited by Jewish people during the Friday night service, she reminded us. I will tell you about our knotted fate, our lives during the Russian pogroms of the late 19th century. For a moment she was quiet, her worn hands resting gently in her lap, and I felt her reaching back in time to once more relate how people can survive under great duress. Then she began. They did not know when the terror started. Hannah and Jacob, my parents, awoke in the cold dawn to the shrieking clamor of men yelling, horses snorting, as they thundered back and forth in front of their hut. They clutched at each other as they yelled for their children, Ida, Sheila, Max, to get into their bed. Trying to calm the trembling children, they looked into each other's eyes. Another pogrom. The Tsar was on the rampage again. He needed a scapegoat to satisfy the discontent in Russia. The noise surrounded them, intensifying and then abating. Waves of terror assaulted them as they lay trembling, huddling together in their bed, praying that the hut they lived in would stand firm and that they would not be set afire. Suddenly there was silence. They waited, no sound. They waited, still clinging to each other, no sound. Jacob attempted to leave the bed and Hannah pulled him back. They waited. He pushed her aside and crawled out of bed in his nightdress, down to the earthen floor to peek out a mud-spattered window. They were gone. In relief, Jacob raised his eyes to heaven. His family was safe. He and Hannah tended to their children, who were now allowed to cry out, soothing the bodies, but unable to soothe the minds that would remember the terror that came upon them every year or so. They dressed hurriedly. Jacob was the first to the door. The smell of earth invaded his nostrils. Earth plowed up and turned over and over again. Hannah stood beside him, and the two of them wept as they clung together. The fields had been completely destroyed. The spring crop of food for their family, the food that was to nourish them all summer and part of the winter, destroyed completely. Why? Why? This was the 6th year of their planting. They had been hoping for an abundant harvest that would last through the next year. The Bible stated that the 7th year the land should lie fallow to regain its strength. Hannah and Jacob were prepared to follow this law, along with the law that the edges of the field should be harvested for the poor. For generations, their families had lived by these laws. Now, what would the poor have to eat? What would they eat? Could they survive a Russian winter? They didn't have to say anything, but looked into each other's eyes and embraced intensely. Finally, Hannah turned and with the feet of an aged woman walked into the hut. Life must go on. She knew that. She called the children. The breakfast had to be made. Then they would walk out into the tangled crops torn from the earth and try to salvage as the best they could what remained. As I sit here telling you this story, you must imagine the strong beliefs they had in themselves and their inner strength and fortitude. Politically, times were getting so bad that Hannah and Jacob felt it was time to leave this land they loved, on this land on which generations before them had managed to survive. Gathering only what they could each carry, they left the land and came to America. I, Grandma Ida, relate this story to you, and I want you to tell it to your children and their children. Love of family and belief in yourself will help you help God untangle your knotted fate. My family and I sat there, deep in our own thoughts, and we each knew that our lives had been enriched and nourished by this woman who had survived. Each child, without prompting, rose to kiss and hug their grandmother.